Lights from the Reynolds family dinner were still burning behind me when I heard glass crack under my feet. Dropped fork, a breath held. My mother didn't notice. She was too busy posing beside Sienna, their laughter chiming like nothing outside that room mattered. I stood there invisible in a dress I'd outgrown, the only one without a seat at the polished table. No one saw me step back toward the door, fingers shaking on my car keys. No one asked why I left early. They wouldn't learn until later. What happened on that dark highway or who signed the papers they refused. My name is Sarah Hayes, and for as long as I can remember, I learned to make myself smaller so the house could stay calm. When my mother remarried, the walls shifted. Sienna arrived with a full nursery, a walk-in closet, and a balcony room overlooking the yard. My things were packed into 2 cardboard boxes and pushed into the little room above the garage. I remember sitting on the floor tracing the dust outlines where my trophies used to stand, listening to the laughter drifting from the new baby's room like I had already been replaced. Most weekends, my mother planned spa days or shopping trips for the 3 of them. She didn't say it directly, but the message was always the same: Victor, Sienna, and her. I became the older one, a title she used when she didn't want to deal with questions or introductions. At gatherings, she'd gesture vaguely in my direction without turning her head. I learned to nod, smile, and move out of the frame before the camera clicked. There were little moments that carved the pattern deeper. The time Sienna spilled juice on the living room rug, and I was the one scolded because I should have been watching her. The birthday morning, I came downstairs and found her opening a pile of gifts, while my single envelope sat at the end of the table, unopened, forgotten. Or the afternoon I made honor roll and placed the certificate on the counter only to find it tossed into the recycling bin, hours later crumpled beneath takeout wrappers. I tried to make peace with it. I kept my room neat, stayed out of sight, finished my chores before anyone asked. But even silence can't protect you from being erased. The house had a way of reminding me of my place in the discarded things. The missing invitations, the locked door to Sienna's room while mine stayed open as if privacy wasn't something I needed. Grandpa Elias was the only constant. Every Friday, he'd pull up in his old truck and tap twice on the horn. I'd grab my bag, slip out the back door, and climb in. He never asked questions. He just drove to the coast, windows down, letting the salt air wash off whatever the week had left on me. In his small house, nothing shifted under my feet. My name wasn't forgotten there. Looking back, I can see how all those small, quiet cuts prepared me for the night. Everything shattered. They taught me not to expect anyone to come running. They taught me how to disappear without making a sound. It was supposed to be a simple family party, the kind where everyone smiled too wide and pretended the past didn't exist. I stayed long enough to stack plates, long enough to hear my mother tell someone that she and Sienna had an early spa appointment the next morning. A little reset before our trip, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind Sienna's ear as if the world revolved neatly around the 2 of them. No one noticed when I slipped out. The night air felt colder than it should have of. I held my keys tight, the metal, edges digging into my palm as I walked to the driveway. My mother's voice floated from the porch, something about reservations and new swimsuits. Then it faded behind me. The storm came fast. Rain hammered the windshield, turning the highway into a sheet of blurred lights. Wipers squalled across the glass, struggling to keep up. I kept one hand clenched around the steering wheel, the other braced on my knee. I told myself to breathe, to stay awake, to just get home. I never saw the other car, until it was too late. A flash of headlights, a skid, metal twisting, the world flipping hard and sudden, then nothing but the smell of smoke and the taste of blood. Voices came in fragments, someone yelling for help, someone else saying she's still breathing. I felt cold hands on my face, straps tightening across my shoulders, motion I couldn't control. When the hospital lights hit me, they were too bright, sharp enough to slice through the fog in my head. I heard a doctor say the words, emergency surgery. I heard urgency in every voice except the one I needed. A nurse held a phone near my cheek, her fingers trembling slightly. Your daughter needs immediate consent. the doctor said, steady and clear. On the screen, my mother lay on a padded table, a white mask on her face. Sienna lounged beside her, scrolling earbuds in. Spa music hummed under their voices like a cruel joke. My mother sighed, bored, as if the request was nothing but an inconvenience. She spoke softly, carelessly, and just like that, I understood exactly where I stood in that family. I don't remember the moment they wheeled me into surgery or the night that followed. What I remember is waking to a different kind of silence. The sterile kind humming with machines and antiseptic. My throat burned. My body felt heavy, stitched together with pain. A nurse adjusted something beside me, then lifted a small whiteboard so I could read the words written in thick black marker. Legal guardian Elias Brooks. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Not from the tubes or the swelling, but from the shock of seeing my grandfather's name where my mother should have. He wasn't supposed to sign anything. He wasn't even supposed to be reachable that quickly. But he had been. He always was. He sat beside my bed the entire first night, his hands folded, eyes fixed on the rise and fall of my breathing. When I drifted awake again, he was still there, still wearing the same jacket, a faint smell of sea salt clinging to him like a second skin. He didn't talk much, just small things. How the tide had been high earlier, how the neighbor's dog kept getting into his garden. It didn't matter what he said. What mattered was that he stayed. My mother didn't come. Not the next day, not the day after that. By the fourth morning, my grandfather stepped out briefly to speak with someone in the hallway. I heard low voices, the rustle of papers. When he came back, he placed a folder on the table where I could see it. A single blue tab peeked out from the top. "Rest," he said softly. "I'll take care of the rest." I didn't ask what the rest meant. Something in his voice told me I didn't need to know yet. While I slept, he worked. While I fought through pain and therapy sessions, he sat in small meeting rooms with attorneys. He gathered medical records, phone logs, timestamps. He printed emails, requested nurse statements, obtained copies of every note the hospital had taken from the moment they admitted me. Every file had a date, a signature, a line that told the truth in a way feelings never could. He never raised his voice, never spoke badly about my mother. He simply moved through each step with the calm precision of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating systems. When I was strong enough to sit up, he rolled a table toward my bed. On it lay a neat stack of documents, organized, labeled quiet in their power. I ran my fingers across the edges, feeling the weight of paper that wasn't mine to carry, but had been carried for me. "You don't have to look at any of it," he told me. "I just want you to know it's done." I nodded, though the edges of the pages blurred through tears I didn't want him to see. Therapy began soon after. Every movement hurt, lifting my legs, sitting upright, turning in bed. My jaw throbbed, my ribs felt stitched with fire, but each day my grandfather sat in the corner, a magazine spread across his lap, pretending to read while keeping count of every WSE I made. His steadiness anchored me when my own body felt alien. Weeks passed. The nurses began greeting him by name. One of them taped a small paper to his usual chair reserved. He laughed when he saw it, but he never sat anywhere else. The day they discharged me, he didn't let me walk to the car alone. He lifted me gently into the passenger seat of his truck, tucking a blanket around my legs like I was made of glass. The drive to his house smelled of salt and open air. When he carried me across the threshold, the house felt warmer than I remembered. Pale blue, walls, soft light, and the faint sound of wind chimes tapping gently in the breeze. That night, I sat on the porch in one of his old sweaters, breathing in the ocean. My phone buzzed, my mother's name on the screen. 10 rings, 20, I pressed decline. No explanation, no apology, no second chance, just the quiet click of a line. I finally learned to cut. The days that followed felt like stepping into a new world, one where nothing dramatic happened, but everything mattered. My grandfather cooked, I healed, and in the background, silently, he continued preparing the final set of documents in that blue tabbed folder. I saw it on the counter one morning, thick and heavy, waiting. It wasn't revenge, it wasn't anger, it was something else. It was a boundary. And for the first time, it was mine. The courthouse didn't look intimidating from the outside, just old brick-muted windows. The kin. of place you could walk past without noticing, but inside, everything echoed heels on tile, hushed voices, the shuffle of paper. My grandfather walked beside me, steady and quiet, his hand hovering close without touching, ready if I slipped. I still moved slower than most people, but I stood straighter than I had in months. When we entered the hearing room, Lorraine was already seated. She wore a dark blazer that didn't fit her right hair, pulled back too tight, like she was trying to hold her life together with bobby pins. Sienna sat beside her, arms folded, the shine gone from her usual confidence. Victor wasn't there. I didn't expect him to be. I didn't look at either of them. I kept my eyes on the table in front of me, on the neat blue folder my grandfather placed down with deliberate care. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Then it began. The hospital's attorney spoke first, presenting dates, times, documents. Every word felt like a drop of cold water, steady and unflinching. The room stayed still as medical staff statements were read. How long I'd been unconscious, the urgency of the injuries, the requirement for someone to consent. Then they brought in the recording. A court clerk connected the monitor. A faint hum filled the silence. My stomach tightened, but I didn't look away. The screen lit up with the soft, dim light of the spa room. Lorraine lay on a padded table, a white mask covering half her face, soft music playing under her words. Sienna lounged beside her, twirling a strand of hair, eyes glued to her phone. The nurse's voice came next, shaky but clear. "Ma'am, your daughter needs emergency surgery. We need consent." My mother sighed, irritated. Then she said it. "If it dies, let me know. I don't have time for paperwork." The words dropped into the courtroom like something heavy and sharp. I heard someone exhale, a long, stunned sound. The judge froze pen. Suspended midair. On the screen. Sienna briefly lifted her phone, aimed it toward my bloodied face on the hospital gurney, and snapped a picture. When the video ended, no one moved. The hospital representative handed over the phone logs. Timestamps, message threads, screenshots. Sienna shifting in her seat, Lorraine staring at her hands, knuckles blanching. The judge finally set her pen down. "Mrs. Reynolds," she said, her voice flat, controlled. "I have presided over many cases involving minors' neglect and crisis care. I have never seen a response like yours to a child in critical condition." Lorraine opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her throat bobbed once, like she swallowed her own explanation. My grandfather didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone felt like a wall behind me, solid, unmoving. The attorney continued. More paperwork, more dates, more proof that someone else my grandfather had signed. Everything stayed every night, met every requirement. My turn came last. I stood slowly. My cane tapped once against the floor before I steadied my balance. When I faced the judge, the room blurred for a second, then sharpened. "I don't want their apology," I said. "I don't want anything from them. I just want this to be over." My voice didn't shake, not once. The judge nodded, eyes softening just slightly, then straightened. "Permanent termination of parental rights for Lorraine Hayes," she said. "Full guardianship granted to Elias Brooks. Additionally, the court recognizes his petition to adopt Amanda Hayes. Final approval is granted." The gavel struck, a sound like a door closing. Lorraine gasped a small broken sound, but I didn't turn. Sienna whispered something, voice cracking, but I didn't listen. I reached for the blue folder. My grandfather placed his hand over mine, not stopping, just steadying. When we walked out of the courtroom, the hallway fell. Brighter, airier. People stepped aside without knowing why. At the door I paused, letting the sunlight hit my face. My grandfather opened it fully, waiting for me to move before he did. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was stepping into something new. The weeks after the hearing felt strangely weightless, as if someone had turned down the volume on the world. My grandfather drove us back to the house by the water windows cracked just enough for the salt air to slip in. I leaned back against the seat, watching the shoreline pass in slow, steady lines. No one was chasing us anymore. No one was waiting to demand anything from me. At home, the day settled into a quiet rhythm. Morning light spilled through the pale blue walls of my room, warm and unhurried. My grandfather brewed coffee in the old pot that always clicked twice. Before starting, I moved carefully around the house, still stiff in some places, still tender in others, but my body felt like mine again. Not something someone had almost signed away. Therapy shifted too. It wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about relearning what safety felt like. Some afternoons I sat on the deck with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the tide drag lines across the sand. The air smelled of salt, and the wind carried the soft chime of the metal bells my grandfather hung above the railing. He joined me sometimes, bringing 2 sweet teas, settling beside me without asking questions. We didn't talk about the hearing. We didn't talk about my mother or Sienna. Silence wasn't avoidance, not anymore. It was space. It was choice. One evening, I walked the length of the pier without stopping. No cane, no pauses, just the sound of the ocean rolling beneath me. When I reached the end, the sun was lowering itself into the horizon, painting everything in muted gold. I stood there, breathing in the steady rhythm of the waves, feeling something loosen inside my chest. Freedom didn't arrive with noise. It arrived with quiet. I didn't go back to the old house or the old version of myself that waited for someone to choose me. Life moves differently when the noise fades slower, steadier, honest. Some nights my grandfather and I sit on the porch, the wind carrying the smell of salt and the soft creak of the swing beneath us. The world feels wider now, not because anything grand happened, but because nothing is being taken from me anymore. Families can fail you because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's justice wrapped in grace. Silent revenge.